Make no mistake, chums, this is a man on the edge. Some might suggest a man-child on the edge. We're talking, of course, about Prince Harry.
Saying that Harry and Meghan are dangerous.
I think that they jeopardize the future of the monarchy.
I would use the word danger. It's genuine peril.
It is hiding 18 documents about Harry. Not redacting, they're just hiding them in full. 289 more are being reviewed behind closed doors.
4 commentators, 4 different stories, one name none of them can leave alone. But the moment that actually broke Prince Harry this year wasn't a courtroom, and it wasn't a headline. It was a song. 3 minutes of it in a room full of strangers. Keep that in your back pocket. We'll get there, and it'll hurt. Be honest for a second. The first time you saw him this year, the untrimmed beard, the sunk shoulders, the 1,000-yard stare, your gut said something was wrong. You weren't imagining it. Every outlet told you reconciliation was back on, the door was open, all forgiven. Your gut said otherwise. And this whole video is why.
That Harry returned to the UK just now with the King's blessing was a triumph.
That's the version they needed you holding. Harry home, Harry forgiven. 45 minutes of tea on the King's own turf, and suddenly a 6-year war looked finished. The pro-Sussex press ran it hard, home and hosed, reconciliation inches away. Hold on to that phrase, the King's blessing. It's going to come back, and it won't mean what you think it means.
That Charles offered Harry accommodation at Buckingham Palace, which of course we know became a public relations disaster. But the offer was made.
Look how tall the story builds itself. An accommodation offer at the palace. An invitation onto sacred family ground. A grandfather who only wanted to see his grandchildren. Every single beat of it framed as a man being welcomed back in from the cold. A redemption arc with a bow on top. And then, at a dinner party, Meghan opened her mouth.
And Martha Stewart overhears Meghan Markle boasting about her UK return and her encounter with King Charles at Highgrove House.
And that's the turn. Watch how fast the triumph curdles. The visit that was supposed to stay private didn't survive one dinner. Whatever goodwill that tea bought started leaking the second there was a room worth impressing. That's not a scheduling slip. That's the whole pattern of this marriage. Showing up right on cue.
I mean, it is unbelievably rude and obnoxious. And I think we do what we do for a living. When a figure as big as Martha Stewart puts her name and face out there and makes a comment like that, we believe them. When an anonymous source...
Detail number 1. Martha Stewart, 85, a woman who rebuilt a billion-dollar empire after federal prison, says she heard exactly what she heard. The Sussex Machine's answer was to whisper that the old lady must be confused. Notice the reflex, not a denial of substance.
Suing the Daily Mail, the publishers of the Daily Mail, and he loses. Meghan goes into these public relations battles with the Kardashians over the supposed opt-out for photos at Kris Jenner's 70th birthday party. The row with the Beckhams. What happens? Harry and Meghan, they pick these fights and they never win. It's like the Chihuahua versus the Great Dane, isn't it?
Detail number 2. This isn't one bad week. It's a losing streak with a scoreboard. The Mail, the Kardashians, the Beckhams. Every fight picked, every fight lost, on the record. And pay attention to the animal he reaches for to describe it, because that image tells you these two don't just misjudge one opponent. They misjudge the whole room.
Meghan cannot do well-behaved. She doesn't know well-behaved. It's not in her makeup or in her gift. She can't do it. Why? Because she has a addiction to noise, to publicity, to attention.
Detail 3 is the one that finishes it. Because a couple that loses every fight and keeps swinging isn't strategic. They're compelled. Something is driving it that has nothing to do with winning. And a commentator who watches these two for a living puts a name on that engine. Listen to the exact word he lands on. It reframes the entire reconciliation.
Martha Stewart, the Kardashians, the Beckhams, the Clooneys, potentially even Elton as well, which is the Sussexes do not do well with accomplished people.
Addiction to noise. Sit with that, because it turns the whole Highgrove fairy tale inside out. If that read is right, then the private tea, the good behavior, the reconciliation posture, none of it was ever survivable. Not because they didn't want it badly enough. Because silence cost them the one thing they physically cannot go without.
Demon with psycho moments. Screamed at a florist for 30 minutes over a bouquet. She bullied 2 PAs out of the royal household.
That's the Daily Mail's reporting, not mine. Reheated for the 10-year anniversary of the marriage. 2 assistants gone. A florist screamed at over a bouquet. The word the piece keeps circling is bully. And here's the retroactive twist. Remember the household complaint that never surfaced? Now line it up against everyone else who landed.
In my opinion, no royal racist. Why did the couple instantly change their story 24 hours after the Oprah interview and say, we meant unconscious bias?
Yeah.
Already they were on the slippery slope. And let's not forget, our mutual friend Oprah Winfrey has now disowned that interview.
That next part is one commentator's opinion, said on the record, that the racism story collapsed into unconscious bias inside 24 hours. I'm not ruling on it, but watch what it does to the template. It's not just falling out with people, it's making the accusation, walking it halfway back.
A question mark over multiple members' heads, and then attacks, started rolling in social media-wise and others on these other members. So I think that the word dangerous is an appropriate an appropriate way to describe them.
This is the beat longtime royal watchers took personally. Because whatever you believe about that interview, real people wore the fallout. A question mark got parked over names that never got a reply. Tell me in the comments if you clocked it. Who was quietly absorbing it all? Because he was watching, he was counting, and he doesn't forget.
Yeah.
Prince William acts more like a CEO than an heir. And what company would welcome somebody back with open arms that has jeopardized the privacy of that company, the private conversations, private instances?
A CEO, not an heir. Hold that comparison because it's the entire case compressed into 4 words. You do not let someone back into the building after they've sold the private meetings to the highest bidder and filmed the fallout for streaming. William doesn't do rage. Rage is Harry's department. William does policy. And policy is exactly what makes this thing permanent.
There will be a slow, gradual royal return, but it won't be half in, half out. Because William is not in charge, but he has influence. He's effectively the king-elect.
King-elect. That single phrase quietly reframes the whole Highgrove reunion, because if William is the king-elect, then anything Charles hands Harry is a lease, never a deed. And leases end the day the landlord changes. Remember the king's blessing I told you to hold? The blessing was real. Charles meant every word of it. It just was never his to keep past his own reign.
Because he knows, A, he's got to keep his his son William on board, getting him ready for the monarchy. Also, because he knows that William is going to reverse all of it when he becomes king.
There it is, the smallest line in the conversation, and it's the whole story. Everything up to this point was context. Here's the reveal. The reconciliation everyone's fighting over does not survive the next reign. Charles can welcome Harry back 100 times. On the day the crown moves, the reading is simple. All of it.
And there's only so much Charles can do by way of welcoming Harry back without inspiring the ire and rage of William.
So Charles isn't powerless because he stopped caring. He's powerless because the one man he has to keep happy is the same man who holds the door. That's not a family row you fix with an apology and a photo op. That's arithmetic. Succession arithmetic. And in 900 years, arithmetic has never once been talked out of itself.
Harry came up off his seat, threw his arms around her, no acknowledgement at all from Markle.
I need to slow down here because the next part isn't funny. Remember the song I told you to pocket at the start? Here it is. A charity gala in Canada. A young British singer named Sydney Christmas performs Tomorrow, the one from Annie. A song, and really hear this, about believing tomorrow comes out better than today.
Harry wasn't just emotional, he was in tears. Markle, oblivious, too busy dancing to Adam Levine.
In tears, not misty, in tears, in a room stacked with the exact donors the brand cannot afford to lose, and he could not hold it together. That is not the face of a man who chose freedom and got it. And notice, genuinely notice, who was not standing beside him when it happened. She was across the floor, dancing to the band,
with a young woman that admired him,
It was uplifting him.
that looked up to him, that was starstruck, that was pinch me moment, calling him the most wonderful soul. And what happens when people praise Harry to Meghan? She hates it.
One commentator's read on that night is brutal and simple. Harry lit up not because anything happened, but because a stranger looked at him like he still mattered. That is the tell. When a kind word from someone you just met cracks a grown man open, it's because he is starving for it where he's supposed to get it.
Harry was not groomed. He didn't have time to go and get a beard trim or his hair trimmed because he was really kicking back.
Here is the man from 10 years ago. He filled a room, he cracked the jokes, he walked like the whole thing belonged to him. And here is the same man at that gala. No beard trim, no haircut, because right up until the car pulled in, he was still arguing about whether he even had to show up. Same man, 10 years apart.
And actually, the only time he does look happy is when he's not with her and he's in the UK. She's nowhere to be found, like when he did the Invictus thing without her. He's looked, even though his joke bombed, he just looked like old Harry.
Old Harry, that's the phrase people keep reaching for. And here's the quiet cruelty buried in it. The only footage where he looks like himself again is the footage where she is nowhere in the frame. Let that sit. It means the version of him the whole world misses now only exists in her absence. A song can't fix that.
I sniff a cover-up relating to Prince Harry and his visa documents. Something is not right about this.
And while all of that was playing out, the tears, the pattern, the door easing shut behind him, a second storyline was building on the other side of the Atlantic. This one has nothing to do with feelings. It's paperwork. Cold, boring, career-ending paperwork. And it might be the thing that actually closes the American chapter for good. Watch two documented...
Harry admitted in Spare to using countless amounts of narcotics. That is not an allegation. He wrote it in his book.
This is his own book, remember, not an allegation anyone invented, and the United States asks about drug use directly, on the form, in black and white. So the question stops being tabloid chatter and turns legal. A criminal barrister lays it out on record.
The real problem he faces is whether he has misled the authorities on his application. What has he disclosed, and has he not disclosed certain things? So if it comes to a false answer, then that may be interpreted as fraud or willful misrepresentation. So a fraud goes to dishonesty. So if he knowingly gave a false answer on any application, then that's by itself a permanent ground of ineligibility.
Fraud, or willful misrepresentation. That's the phrase that actually matters, not what he took, but what he wrote down. And here is plant number 3 paying off in full. 18 documents about that visa application, withheld in their entirety. Not redacted, withheld. So ask yourself the
and withheld all 18 documents. Now that by itself seems suspicious. There's another 289 documents under review. In total, there's almost 2,500 pages.
18 sealed completely, 289 more under review. Nearly 2,500 pages the public is simply not allowed to see. Legally, the privacy argument holds. That part is real. But the same barrister keeps circling back to one specific word for how people at this altitude get through the door anyway.
He would argue that as the king's son, he should qualify for that waiver because it has a foreign relation significance.
The waiver, the escape hatch that exists specifically for people of foreign relations significance. Translate that out of the legalese. The king's son does not use the same door as the rest of us, which lands us right back where this whole thing started. The exact establishment protection Harry spent 5 years publicly rejecting.
I mean, it's just never going to happen. But I think this is why I always drill down on the point. The protection that comes with being listed on the royal website is priceless.
Priceless protection. And notice the irony. Nobody involved is supposed to say out loud, the establishment Harry spent half a decade attacking is the same establishment currently holding his visa file shut. He didn't escape it. He never left it. He's still standing inside the machine. He just changed which part.
When Trump was asked in 2024 whether Harry should face consequences over the drugs, he sounded ready to act. If he lied, Trump said, they'll have to take appropriate action. But once he was actually in office, holding the power to do something about it, he did say, I'll leave him alone.
Ready to act, and then, once he actually held the power, I'll leave him alone. Read that swing however you want. One honest reading. Even a president who openly can't stand Meghan values his relationship with the king more than the satisfaction of deporting the king's son. Which is, once again, the crown shielding Harry.
No gigs. Name me a big juicy gig that they've got. The Netflix is a first look deal. Ted Sarandos, good friend of mine and yours, tore up the retail agreement to sell the flower sprinkles, which is not a vote of confidence because Netflix exists to make money.
Now stack the money on top of the paperwork, because the timing is the real cruelty. Netflix personally tore up the retail deal. The commentator's word for what that signals was blunt, not investable, and that's the exact backdrop against which the last door home is being welded shut. No safety net on either side of the ocean now.
So they grabbed $735 per screen and opened at 15 this last weekend behind Cat Video Fest 2026, which is 70 minutes of compilation videos of the internet's best cats.
$735 a screen, beaten at the actual box office by a compilation reel of internet cat videos. I'm not editorializing there, those are the numbers reported on air. That is what building an empire looks like in month 60 of the new life. And the door behind him just clicked, right on.
They don't recognize a failure. They just keep on going to the next thing. So Netflix is a distant memory. You're not supposed to remember that the humiliation of her being dumped by one of the biggest giants in streaming only in March because nobody wanted to watch it.
And the pattern holds even here. No pause, no reckoning, no quiet regroup. Just straight on to the next launch, the next relaunch, the next headline. Which is precisely why the William decision lands so hard. When you never once stop to absorb a loss, you don't notice the single exit being quietly bricked up behind your back.
And then when the royal family needed Harry most, Queen Elizabeth was ill, Prince Philip had died. He not only slammed the door in their face, he tried to burn the palace down on the way out.
That's the reporting, not my phrasing. That when the family needed him most, he didn't just leave, he torched the exit on the way out. And whatever you make of that framing, here's what it did in practice. It spent the goodwill. Every burned bridge is one fewer route home. Count them as they go, because the count is the whole point.
He's painted himself into a corner, burned his bridges with his family. The relationship with William is non-existent. England can't stand him now. They'll never really get over his betrayal. So with that in mind, he has no option. He's actually trapped.
Trapped. That's the commentator's word. On record, not mine. Bridges burned behind him, an ocean in front of him, a brother who won't pick up the phone, and a home that, on everything we've built tonight, simply isn't coming back. That's the box he's in. And the hardest part to watch is that he built 3 of its 4 walls himself.
If you divorce Meghan before the children are at the age of 18, then you want to go back to the UK, are you really going to leave your children in another country? There's no way.
No, and then he's in no man's land.
And there's the 4th wall. The children are American now. That's a neutral reported fact, nothing more. But look what it does to the map. The one move that might send him home is the exact move that would cost him them. So he stays. Not because he's happy, because on this reading, every door out is worse than the room.
Yeah.
Meghan didn't have to be there. She shouldn't have been there. Meghan has betrayed the royal family.
Yes.
She should never, ever be back on royal property.
So here's what we're actually left holding. A tea sold to the world as a homecoming. A song that broke a grown man in front of strangers. A beard he didn't get time to trim. A file the state won't open. And a door held shut, not in anger, never in anger, on schedule.
More importantly, he's got to find millions of pounds before it's simply too late. Don't read into the fact that they've turned up over at the David Foster Foundation. Mega rich people do not dip into their own purses. I know that for a fact. Harry, though, has all of these lessons to learn. But behind the scenes, there's a man on the edge. The only thing is, seemingly, the wife hasn't noticed it.
So take this one with you. You can be welcomed back 100 times and still never once be let back in, because forgiveness is a feeling, and a throne is a calendar. Charles offers the feeling, freely and often. William keeps the calendar, and a calendar has never been argued out of its own math.
Invictus is, I believe, slipping through his fingers. I hate to say it, and I really love Invictus. I think it's dying a slow death. I'm going to tell you that. It's losing sponsors. Going to be talking to Paula Froelich about it. She's very hot on Invictus.
And that's the real-world consequence, in a single line. Even Invictus, the one thing in all of this that was ever truly his, is now described as slipping through his fingers. No role waiting at home, no safe deal abroad, and a visa file that could still decide whether America even stays his address at all.
I think he doesn't realize that the elephant in the room is the woman he married, and that's why he's so miserable. Look at the difference between Harry when he's in England without Megs. Would you acknowledge the body language is different? He's cracking jokes again. I know the Joe Marler podcast was embarrassing and cringe. I get it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing.
He was old Harry.
So here's the real question, and both sides are honest. Is Harry being coldly shut out by a family that owed him more, or a man finally living consequences he authored? Tell me which, and be specific below. Next time, those 18 sealed pages, the 289 still under review, and the one question inside them that could end the American chapter for good.